I had been planning this moment for months. Every detail was carefully thought out, every step meticulously timed. I had the perfect ring, a beautiful diamond that sparkled with promise. It was everything I had imagined since I first met her. Soft, graceful, but powerful in its simplicity. It wasn't just a piece of jewelry to me. It symbolized everything I hoped our future would be. The moment I decided I was going to propose to Emma, I knew I needed to do something special. She deserved a memory she would cherish forever. I'd even gone as far as booking a flight across the country to surprise her at her favorite place, by the beach, where we had spent our first weekend together. I wanted everything to be perfect. I wanted to show her how much I loved her, how much I was willing to invest in our future. It wasn't going to be easy, though. We lived far apart. Both of us focused on our careers, which meant our visits were rare and precious. I'd taken time off work, planned everything down to the last detail, and even arranged for a friend to make sure she would be free that weekend. It was the perfect setup. I was sitting on the plane, my heart racing with excitement, as I imagined the look on her face when I knelt down and asked her to be my wife. I could already see her smile, the tears in her eyes. I couldn't wait. I just couldn't wait. As the plane neared its destination, I felt a surge of nervous energy, my hands fidgeting with the seatbelt. I couldn't help it. This was the moment that would change everything. I grabbed my phone to call her, eager to hear her voice and let her know I was almost there. She picked up on the first ring. "Hey, baby, you're almost here?" she said, her voice sweet and light, just the way I remembered. "I'm about to land," I said, smiling. "I can't wait to see you." "I can't wait either," she responded, her voice just as excited. "I'll be waiting for you, as always." I leaned back in my seat, closing my eyes and letting the anticipation wash over me. But then, something unusual caught my attention. In the background, I heard another voice. Soft, but clear enough for me to make out the words. "You need to leave him. Just end it." I froze. My heart skipped a beat. "What the hell? Who was that?" I asked, my voice suddenly tight. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what I had just heard. Was I hearing things? Was it someone in the background? Maybe she had a friend over or something, but that didn't sound like any of her friends. "Oh, it's nothing," she said quickly, almost too quickly. "Just a friend. Don't worry about it." But something didn't sit right with me. Her tone was too casual, almost dismissive. And why had she sounded so nervous when I asked about it? I tried to brush it off, to push the doubt to the back of my mind, but it lingered. It gnawed at me. "Okay," I said slowly, still uncertain, but wanting to believe her. "I'll see you soon, Em." "See you soon," she replied, her voice back to its usual sweetness. I hung up, staring out of the window as the plane began its descent. The unsettling feeling refused to leave me. It was like a crack had formed in the picture I had been painting of our life together. I tried to shake it off, focusing on the excitement of what was to come, but I couldn't quite let go of the nagging feeling that something wasn't right. As the plane touched down, I felt a mix of excitement and unease. I grabbed my bag and hurried toward the exit, my heart racing not just with the joy of seeing Emma, but also with the strange feeling that something was about to change forever. I stepped off the plane, the cool air of the city surrounding me as I made my way toward baggage claim. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I pulled it out to see a text from Emma. "Can't wait to see you. Be there in 10 minutes." I smiled at the message. She always had this way of making me feel special, like I was the most important person in her world. It was one of the things I loved about her. Even though we spent so much time apart, whenever we were together, it felt like everything else faded away. I was already imagining her face, the warmth of her smile, the softness of her embrace. I grabbed my luggage and walked outside to the taxi stand, scanning the crowd for her familiar face. I didn't see her at first, but then there she was, standing near a parked car, her back turned toward me, a light breeze blowing through her hair. She looked even more beautiful than I remembered. I started walking toward her, feeling that familiar rush of affection. The taxi driver gave me an odd look, as if trying to piece together why a man would be walking toward someone instead of getting in the cab. But I didn't care. I just wanted to see her. Emma turned around as I got closer, and her face lit up with a grin that made my heart soar. "You made it!" she exclaimed, her voice full of excitement. I couldn't help myself. I took a step forward, pulled her into my arms, and kissed her. I was lost in the moment, savoring the feeling of being so close to her, the smell of her perfume, the warmth of her body. I felt like everything was right in the world, but then I pulled back, noticing something that I hadn't before. A man was standing behind her, just inside the doorway of her apartment. He was smiling, a calm, almost too confident smile. He didn't look out of place, but something about him made my stomach twist. I quickly turned my attention back to Emma, trying to shake off the discomfort. "It's so good to see you," I said, smiling. She returned my smile, but I could tell there was a slight hesitation in her eyes. "I've missed you," she said softly, looking up at me with those big brown eyes that always seemed to melt my heart. Before I could respond, the man spoke up, his voice smooth, almost too casual. "Hey, good to see you again," he said, stepping forward with his hand extended. "I'm Josh, Emma's friend." I shook his hand, but the words "friend" seemed to echo in my mind, more and more hollow as I heard them. There was something in his tone, something off about the way he said it. He didn't seem like a friend at all. "Nice to meet you," I said, but my voice lacked the warmth it should have had. I could feel the tension building in the air, and I wasn't sure why. Emma was already starting to lead me inside, but I couldn't help but glance back at Josh. His eyes were locked on me for a moment too long, and then he smiled again, that same knowing smile. I felt a chill run down my spine, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. It was the same kind of smile I had heard in the background during our phone call earlier, the kind that made my heart drop. As Emma showed me inside, I tried to shake off the feeling of unease. Maybe I was just being paranoid. After all, she had assured me it was just a friend, right? I was here to surprise her, to make this moment perfect, and I was determined not to let any lingering doubts ruin it. But as I set my bag down and turned to face her, I couldn't help but feel that something was wrong. The connection I thought we had, so strong and undeniable, suddenly felt fragile, like a thread that could snap at any moment. Emma smiled at me, her face lit with joy, but as I looked past her to where Josh was standing, I realized something. He wasn't leaving. He wasn't going anywhere. And for some reason, that made my heart race in a way I hadn't expected. I tried to push the growing discomfort aside as Emma led me into the cozy living room, her usual warmth filling the space. Her apartment was exactly how I remembered. Soft, inviting, with little touches of her personality everywhere. A framed photo of us from our first vacation together sat on the coffee table, next to a stack of her favorite books, a little reminder of the life we'd built together, despite the distance. I smiled at the sight, but the nagging feeling in my chest refused to leave. Josh had followed us into the room, standing awkwardly near the door. He wasn't offering to leave or even make himself scarce. In fact, he was watching me closely, his arms crossed over his chest as he leaned against the wall. His presence felt too heavy, too deliberate. Emma turned to me, a bright smile still on her face, though there was a flicker of something else behind her eyes, something I couldn't place. "So, what do you think of the place?" she asked, her voice light. "It's great," I said, forcing a smile. "I love how cozy it feels. You've done a really nice job with it." I looked back at Josh, who hadn't said anything since I'd shaken his hand. His silence made everything feel more awkward. I tried to ignore him, but his eyes were on me, almost like he was waiting for something, waiting for me to do or say something. "We were just about to grab some dinner, actually," Emma said, breaking the silence. "Do you want to join us?" I glanced at her, surprised. "Oh, I didn't mean to interrupt your evening. I thought we could just spend some time together, maybe go for a walk on the beach." Emma hesitated, glancing over at Josh for a brief moment before turning back to me with a reassuring smile. "It's fine, really. Josh doesn't mind. He's just leaving soon." I nodded slowly, still unsure why I felt so out of place in my own plan. This wasn't how I envisioned our reunion. It wasn't the cozy, intimate evening I had dreamed of. It felt like an intrusion, like something was standing between us, some invisible barrier I couldn't cross. And that something was Josh. "Right," I said, forcing my voice to sound normal. "Then I'll join you." "Just for a bit," Josh replied smoothly, his voice nonchalant. "I've got a few things to take care of, nothing too important." I nodded, but his words felt off. The way he said "nothing too important" seemed dismissive, as if whatever he was doing didn't matter at all, like he had all the time in the world. I nodded, but his words felt off. The way he said "nothing too important" seemed dismissive, as if whatever he was doing didn't matter at all, like he had all the time in the world. Emma didn't seem to notice the discomfort in the air. She was busy setting the table, chatting about her day, the excitement of seeing me, of spending time together. But I couldn't focus on her words. My mind kept going back to the phone call from earlier. I couldn't shake the voice I'd overheard. "You need to leave him. Just end it." I glanced at the door again. Josh was still there. The door was wide open, and I couldn't help but feel like I wasn't the only one who had a stake in what was happening tonight. The air between us felt charged, filled with something I didn't understand but couldn't ignore. "Is everything okay, babe?" Emma asked, sensing my distraction. She placed a plate in front of me and sat down across from me, her eyes filled with concern. I nodded, though I wasn't sure if I was lying to her or myself. "Yeah, just a little tired from the flight. I'm good." But my stomach was turning. I kept thinking back to that moment in the phone call, and how everything seemed to be unraveling too quickly. As we ate dinner, I could barely focus on the conversation. Emma and Josh were talking about their shared experiences, old friends, inside jokes, memories from the past. I tried to join in, but every time I did, I found myself watching Josh more and more closely. The way he leaned in just a bit too close to Emma when she spoke. The way he'd occasionally touch her arm lightly, as though there was something more there than simple friendship. I couldn't stop the thoughts that kept creeping into my mind. Was Emma hiding something from me? Had I missed the signs? I was so sure of us, so certain that we were on the same page, but everything now felt like a facade. Every word, every gesture, every glance from Josh felt like a subtle confirmation of my worst fear. After dinner, Emma suggested we go outside. "Let's get some fresh air," she said, but I wasn't sure if it was just for me or if it was for something else entirely. We stepped outside into the cool evening air, the salty breeze from the nearby ocean brushing against my skin. The sun had just dipped below the horizon, leaving behind a soft orange glow that painted the sky in warm hues. It was beautiful, peaceful, everything I had hoped for. But the peace was fleeting. Emma walked ahead of me, leading the way down the path toward the beach. I followed her, my footsteps slow and deliberate, my mind racing. The sound of the waves crashing on the shore was comforting, but it couldn't drown out the growing sense of unease that had settled in my chest. Behind us, I could hear Josh's voice, soft, almost distant, but it still managed to reach my ears. He was talking to Emma in low tones, too low for me to catch every word, but his presence lingered. He was still there, like an unwelcome shadow, a figure I couldn't fully shake. I tried to ignore it. I had to. This was supposed to be our time. I was here, finally, to surprise her and share this special moment with her. Yet, somehow, everything felt wrong. We reached the beach and Emma turned toward me with a bright smile. "Isn't this place beautiful?" she asked, her eyes glinting with the excitement of sharing it with me. "I've always loved coming here. The ocean calms me." I smiled back, but it didn't quite reach my eyes. "Yeah, it's incredible." I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself, to push away the thoughts swirling in my mind. This was supposed to be the moment I'd been dreaming of for months. But instead of feeling the rush of joy and anticipation, I felt disconnected. "Emma," I said, my voice catching slightly. "Earlier today, when I called you, I heard a voice in the background." She stiffened for a moment, but it was so brief, it could have been my imagination. She turned to face me, her smile faltering slightly. "A voice? What do you mean?" I took a step closer to her, my heart pounding in my chest. "A man's voice. I heard him say something." I hesitated, the words feeling heavy in my mouth. He said, "You need to leave him. Just end it." For a split second I saw something in her eyes, a flicker of guilt, confusion, but it was gone just as quickly as it came. She took a step back, glancing over her shoulder at Josh, who was standing by the path that led to the beach, his arms crossed, looking on with an unreadable expression. "It's nothing," she said quickly, brushing it off. "It was just a friend of mine. You know how I am, always around people. Nothing serious." But her voice was tight, and her words lacked conviction. I could feel the walls going up, the distance widening between us. It was like she was trying to convince herself as much as she was trying to convince me. I opened my mouth to say something, to press further, but the words felt stuck in my throat. The doubt I had been pushing away had suddenly become undeniable. I felt like I was standing on the edge of something I wasn't ready to face. "I'm sure it's nothing," I said finally, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. "But it just didn't sound right." She reached out and touched my arm, her fingers warm and soft against my skin. "It's okay," she said, her voice low and reassuring. "You're here now. That's all that matters." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that everything was fine, that this was just some misunderstanding, some small blip that didn't mean anything. But my gut told me otherwise. I looked back at Josh. He hadn't moved. He hadn't even looked at us directly. But there was something in the way he stood, in the way he was positioned just outside of our conversation, that felt deliberate. Like he was waiting for something, waiting for the right moment. "Maybe I'm just being paranoid," I said, shaking my head and forcing myself to let go of the doubt. It's been a long day. I'm probably just tired." Emma smiled, though it didn't seem as genuine as it had before. "You should rest," she suggested. "We can talk later. Just relax." But something in her voice, something in the way she said it, made me question everything. I nodded, but I didn't feel like I was being completely honest with myself. We walked back to the apartment, and the whole time I could feel the weight of the tension between us. It wasn't just the distance between us physically, it was something deeper. I could feel it, like a silent chasm opening up beneath me, threatening to swallow me whole. I wanted to reach out, to ask her what was really going on, but I wasn't ready to hear the truth. Not yet. Not in this moment. When we entered the apartment, Josh had already disappeared. I didn't hear the door open or close, but somehow he was gone. Emma went to the kitchen, talking about making some tea, about winding down for the night, but I couldn't focus on her words. I was too lost in my own thoughts. I sat on the couch, my mind reeling. The phone call, the voice, the feeling of being betrayed before I even knew the truth. And then it hit me. For all the planning, for all the excitement, I had missed something crucial. Something I should have noticed long ago. My heart sank, and a cold chill spread through me. I was here, ready to propose, ready to take the next step with Emma. But now, I wasn't so sure if she was the woman I thought I knew, and I didn't know if I could trust her anymore. The night dragged on. Emma and I barely spoke after we settled in. The silence hanging between us like an unspoken truth neither of us was willing to confront. She made tea, and we sat together in the living room, but it wasn't the intimate, warm evening I had imagined. The energy between us was strained, like a thread pulled too tightly, ready to snap. I kept thinking about the voice on the phone. The more I replayed it in my mind, the more certain I became that it wasn't a random comment, a casual remark from a friend, as Emma had claimed. It was deliberate, it was intimate, and it was cold. It wasn't until much later that night when Emma had gone to bed that I couldn't take it anymore. The questions had built up too much, and I knew I couldn't leave this unsaid. I had to know the truth, even if it shattered everything. I stood up quietly, my heart pounding in my chest as I walked down the hallway toward her bedroom. I stood outside the door for a long moment, listening to the soft rhythm of her breathing. Part of me wanted to turn around, to forget this whole thing and just go to bed, but I couldn't, not with the gnawing suspicion eating at me. I knocked lightly, and her voice floated through the door. "Yeah?" I opened the door, finding her sitting up in bed, a book in her lap. Her face softened when she saw me. "What's up?" she asked, a smile tugging at the corner of her lips, but there was something in her eyes, something guarded. I took a deep breath, my voice steady, but not as confident as I wanted it to be. "I need to ask you something." She set the book aside and looked at me with a mix of concern and curiosity. "Of course. What's on your mind?" I stepped into the room, my hands clenched into fists by my sides. I wasn't sure how to say this, how to make her understand just how deeply the uncertainty was eating at me. "Earlier tonight, you didn't tell me everything, did you?" I asked, my voice quiet but sharp. Her brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" "You said Josh was just a friend," I began, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. "But when I heard that voice on the phone earlier, when I heard him tell you to leave me, it didn't sound like just a friend. It sounded like something more." I saw her stiffen, her posture going rigid. She swallowed, her eyes avoiding mine for a moment as if searching for the right words. Her lips parted to speak, but she hesitated. "Emma," I said, my voice breaking slightly. "I need to know. I need to understand what's going on. Because right now, I feel like I'm being lied to, and I don't know if I can trust you anymore." Her eyes widened at the last part, and for a moment she just stared at me, lost in her own thoughts. I could see the struggle within her, her guilt, her hesitation. I knew her better than anyone, and right then I saw the truth in her eyes before she even spoke. "I didn't want to hurt you," she said quietly, her voice fragile. She took a deep breath and looked down at her hands, twisting them nervously in her lap. "I didn't know how to tell you." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. "Tell me what?" Her gaze flickered up to meet mine, but she didn't seem to know where to start. "Josh and we've been seeing each other for a while now," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I never meant for it to happen. It started out as a friendship, but it became something more. I didn't want to hurt you, and I didn't want to lose you, but I couldn't keep lying to myself anymore." The world tilted around me, and I felt my stomach drop to my feet. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The man I had seen earlier, the man who had been standing there with that cold, calculating smile, he wasn't just a friend. He was the other man. I felt sick, like the ground beneath me was slipping away. The whole world around me became a blur, and I struggled to catch my breath. How long? Was all I could manage to ask, my voice barely above a whisper. Her eyes filled with tears, and she wiped at them quickly, but I could see the guilt and sorrow in her face. A few months, but it didn't mean what you think it did. I was confused. I didn't want to hurt you, but I also didn't know how to end it with him. I didn't know how to let go of you either. Each word she spoke felt like a weight crushing my chest, and I could feel the anger, the sadness, and the heartbreak bubbling up inside of me. I had trusted her. I had planned to spend my life with her. And now, here she was, telling me that everything had been a lie. "Why didn't you tell me?" I whispered, the hurt in my voice unmistakable. "Why didn't you just tell me the truth from the start? If you were unhappy, if you were seeing someone else, why didn't you just end it with me?" "I was scared," she admitted, her voice trembling. "I didn't know how to say it. I didn't want to lose you. I thought maybe I could keep both of you in my life. But I couldn't, and I'm sorry. I'm so, so sorry." I stood there for a long moment, staring at her, trying to process what she had just said. The woman I had loved, the woman I had been so sure of, had betrayed me in a way I couldn't even fathom. My heart felt like it was breaking in two, and the anger, quiet, simmering, was starting to rise. Finally, I shook my head, my voice barely audible. "I can't do this. I can't be here anymore." She looked up at me, her face filled with desperation. "Please don't leave. I didn't want this to happen. I never wanted to hurt you. But I didn't want to hear it anymore. I didn't want any more excuses." With one last painful glance at her tear-streaked face, I turned and walked out of the room, the weight of betrayal heavy on my shoulders. As I stepped out into the hallway, I felt the world close in around me. The only thing I could think about was how everything had crumbled so quickly. How the life I thought we were building together had been shattered in the blink of an eye. I was no longer the man ready to propose to the woman he loved. I was a man standing on the edge of everything he thought he knew, unsure of what came next. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. The hours dragged on, stretching longer than I thought possible. The pain in my chest felt like it would never subside, and every time I closed my eyes, all I could see was Emma's tearful face, her voice pleading for me to stay, to understand. But I couldn't. Not after everything. I spent the next morning in a daze, walking aimlessly through the streets of the city. I didn't know where I was going or what I was looking for. I just needed space, distance. From Emma, from the betrayal, from the life I thought I had. The weight of everything was crushing. I hadn't realized how much of my future had been tied to her, to the idea of us together. I had made plans. I had dreams. Dreams that no longer seemed possible. The ring I had bought, still safely tucked in my pocket, felt like a cruel joke now. The proposal I had imagined with such hope was nothing more than a distant fantasy, a piece of my past that I was trying to leave behind. I didn't want to talk to anyone. I didn't want to see anyone. But eventually, I had to face reality. I couldn't hide forever. I called my best friend, Luke, the one person I could always rely on to cut through the bullshit and tell me the truth. He didn't answer at first, but I left a message telling him that I needed to talk. I wasn't sure how much I could even say to him. I didn't want to rehash everything. I just wanted to find a way to make sense of it. When he called back, I was sitting in a small park, staring at the trees that seemed to dance in the wind. "Hey, man, it's Luke," he said, his voice steady, as if he already knew something was wrong. "What's going on? You okay?" I sighed, rubbing my eyes with one hand. "No, man, I'm not okay. I don't even know what to say." I took a shaky breath. "Emma, I found out last night. She's been seeing someone else, a guy named Josh. She didn't tell me until I pressed her. She's been hiding it for months." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Shit, I'm so sorry, bro." "Yeah, My voice cracked slightly, but I fought it back. I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go from here. Everything I thought I knew. It's all just a lie. Luke didn't try to offer advice right away. He let the silence hang in the air between us. You need to give yourself time, man, he said finally. It's gonna hurt. It's gonna suck. But don't make any rash decisions right now. Take some time to process. I wasn't sure how I was supposed to process something like this. How was I supposed to just move on when the woman I had loved had turned out to be someone I couldn't even recognize? But Luke was right. I needed time. I couldn't just rush into making decisions when I was drowning in confusion and pain. I don't know if I can even look at her again, I admitted, my voice barely audible. I thought we were building something real. I had a future with her. And now I don't know what to believe. Take a breath, Luke said gently. You're going through hell right now. But don't lose sight of yourself. I know you, man. You're stronger than this. I closed my eyes, trying to ground myself. His words, though simple, felt like the lifeline I needed at that moment. Thanks, Luke. I don't know what I'd do without you right now. Any time, he said. Just know I've got your back. You're not alone in this. I hung up, the heavy weight of the conversation settling in. I still didn't know what came next, but for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a small sliver of clarity. The betrayal had shaken me to my core, but Luke was right. This wasn't the end. It couldn't be. But there was one more thing I needed to do before I could truly start moving on. I had to talk to Sarah. Sarah had always been a good friend to me. She was Emma's best friend, but over the years, she and I had developed a relationship that wasn't built on secrets or lies. She had always been supportive of me, kind to me in ways that Emma never seemed to be. She was someone I could trust, someone who had always been there. And now, as I tried to piece my life back together, I needed to hear her side of things. I needed to know what she had known about Emma and Josh, because in some strange way, I had a feeling that Sarah might hold the answers I was searching for. I hadn't spoken to her since I arrived, but I sent her a text, asking if we could meet. I didn't want to burden her, but I needed someone to talk to. Someone who wasn't part of the drama I had just stepped out of. She agreed, and we set a time to meet up at a cafe later that afternoon. As I made my way to the cafe, I couldn't help but wonder how Sarah would react to everything. Would she be surprised? Would she defend Emma? Try to make excuses for her? Or would she tell me the truth, even if it wasn't easy to hear? When I walked into the cafe, Sarah was already sitting at a corner table, looking out the window. She looked up when I approached, her expression softening as she saw me. "Hey," she said quietly, standing up to give me a quick hug. "How are you holding up?" I sat down across from her, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on me. "I'm not sure, honestly. I don't know how to process this." She nodded, her eyes searching mine, as if trying to figure out what I needed to hear. "I'm really sorry, you know. I hate that you're going through this." I let out a shaky breath. "I need to know everything, Sarah, about Emma and Josh, about what's really been going on. I can't keep feeling like I'm in the dark." Sarah's eyes shifted away from mine for a moment, and I saw her hesitation. But then she met my gaze again, her face soft with compassion. "I don't know all the details, but I can tell you this. Emma's been struggling with this for a while. I think she really didn't know how to get out of it. And Josh, well, he's been there for her in ways that you weren't." Her words hit me like another blow. "So, she chose him," I said quietly, the finality of it all sinking in. "She chose him over me." Sarah didn't deny it. She didn't try to sugarcoat anything. I think for a while she didn't want to choose, but eventually she had to. I sat back in my chair, the weight of it all sinking in. The truth was bitter, but I couldn't ignore it anymore. It was time to let go, time to move on. The weeks that followed were a blur. I didn't immediately know how to put my life back together, how to even begin the process of moving forward. Everything had been built on the foundation of Emma and me, a future that now lay in ruins. And for the first time in a long time, I felt completely untethered. I moved back home, a place I hadn't stayed in years. The quiet of the empty house was a harsh contrast to the noise of everything that had happened. I spent hours pacing around, replaying every moment with Emma in my head. The phone calls, the looks, the moments when something felt off, but I had ignored it, hoping it was just my imagination. I tried to find something to hold on to, something to make sense of the wreckage. I talked to Luke a lot in those days. He was patient, listening without judgment, offering encouragement when I needed it. But there was only so much talking I could do. The real work, the real healing, had to come from within. I'd never been good at being alone. I'd always had someone by my side, someone I could lean on. But now I was forced to face the fact that I had been relying on someone who wasn't who I thought she was. And in doing so, I'd neglected the one person who truly mattered: myself. I decided to take some time away from the distractions of my old life. A few weekends passed, and I found myself signing up for a solo hiking trip in the mountains, something I'd always wanted to do, but had never had the time for. There was something about the idea of being alone in nature that felt right. It felt like I needed the silence, the solitude, to sort through everything in my mind and figure out who I was now. The first day of the hike was difficult. My body wasn't used to the physical exertion, and my mind kept drifting back to Emma, to what she had done, to the lies I had allowed myself to believe. But as I walked deeper into the forest, the exhaustion started to numb the pain, and slowly the weight of the betrayal began to lift, just a little. By the end of the second day, I was sitting on a rock overlooking a wide valley, the sun beginning to set behind the peaks of the mountains. I closed my eyes and breathed in the crisp air. There was a sense of peace here, something that had been missing from my life for so long. I realized I had been so consumed with Emma, with trying to hold on to a relationship that wasn't real, that I had forgotten to live for myself. I took out my phone and looked at the ring I had bought for Emma. It still felt like a mockery, the promise of a future that would never come to be. But in that moment, I made a decision. I wasn't going to hold on to the past any longer. I wasn't going to let this betrayal define me. When I returned from the trip, I began to piece my life back together. I focused on the things I had put aside: my work, my passions, the relationships I had neglected in favor of Emma. I reconnected with old friends, made plans for things I'd always wanted to do but hadn't. The days weren't always easy. There were nights when the loneliness crept in, and the memories of Emma would flood back, unbidden and painful. But slowly, I began to find myself again, to remember who I was before Emma, before the betrayal. It wasn't long before I started talking to Sarah more. We had exchanged a few texts, but we hadn't met up since the cafe. Something about her made me feel grounded, made me feel like I wasn't completely lost in the aftermath of everything. I wasn't sure what it was. Maybe it was her unspoken understanding of what I had gone through, or maybe it was the kindness she had always shown me. I invited her out for coffee one afternoon, and we talked for hours. She listened to me, to my anger, my confusion, and my fear about the future. And when I listened to her talk about her own life, her own struggles, her own dreams, I realized that I had been blind to what had been in front of me all along. Sarah had always been there. She had always been supportive, always kind, always understanding. One night, as we sat on a bench in a quiet park, Sarah looked at me with a softness in her eyes. "You know, I've always admired you," she said, her voice low and sincere. "You've been through a lot, but you're still standing. You're still moving forward." Her words touched something deep inside me. I don't feel like I'm moving forward, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. But I'm trying. It's just hard. It's supposed to be hard, she said, but it gets easier, I promise. One step at a time. I nodded, grateful for her words, for the quiet strength she radiated. In that moment, something shifted within me. I wasn't entirely healed, but I was no longer stuck in the past. I was moving forward. Slowly, yes, but steadily. And that's when I realized something else. I wasn't alone anymore. Not really. I had friends. I had family. I had Sarah, who, in her own quiet way, had been there for me all along. Over the next few months, Sarah and I grew closer. There was a subtle connection between us that neither of us had expected, but both of us embraced. We shared stories, laughed, and helped each other through our own separate struggles. The bond between us deepened, but it was different from what I had shared with Emma. This time, there was no rush. There was no pressure to make things perfect. There was only the slow, steady growth of something real. One evening, we were sitting together on my porch, watching the stars in the sky, when Sarah turned to me with a soft smile. "You know," she said, her voice quiet but full of meaning, "I think you're ready for something real. For someone who sees you for who you truly are." I looked at her, a smile tugging at the corner of my lips. "I think you might be right." And then, something shifted inside me. I had spent so much time wondering what could have been with Emma. I had clung to a future that had been built on lies. But now I realized that the future was still ahead of me. An unwritten story, full of possibility, full of new beginnings. I wasn't ready to propose to Sarah yet. But as I sat there with her, as I realized the depth of what we had shared, I knew that the future wasn't something to fear. It was something to embrace. And maybe, just maybe this time, it would be different.